Hold on.
Talk shoes.
Recorded live.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show, a service of the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com website. I'm your host, William Hayashi. I have too many accolades behind my name to even go into that, but I'm not that important. Our special guest today is Tim Fielder. Pretty decent man about town. He's the brains behind the Matty'S rocket universe. And apparently, with his twin brother, sometimes they masquerade as each other. And we're going to get a little bit better view of him and find out more about this amazing talent. And we might as well just get started. So welcome to the show, Tim.
Thank you, sir. How you guys doing? It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm glad to be here. Now, where are you coming to us from tonight?
I am based in Harlem, New York City, living here with my wife and my children in what we classify as now rapidly gentrifying Harlem, New York.
Oh, you're seeing it happen right in front of your eyes, right?
Oh yes. When you get a high-end French African bistro restaurant on the corner of 139th Street and Lenox Avenue, things are changing.
Yeah, see, for us, it's if we get a Starbucks or a CVS pharmacy. So it's a little. You're a lot more upscale than we are in some of the neighborhoods here.
The Starbucks hasn't come in yet. The Starbucks maybe another year, but they're getting a whole schools down on 125th. So what they call a whole paycheck.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Well, they actually put one of those in. They're putting one of those in Inglewood, which is Chicago's poorest neighborhood, and people said to the Whole Foods people, what the hell's going on? Your prices are unbelievable. And they said, well, we're going to adjust our prices for the neighborhood. And you know what that means? That just means a whole lot of white folks are going to start driving to Inglewood to try to get cheaper prices on their Whole Foods stuff. So I'm not. I don't know if I'm down with that. I don't know what that's going to turn out to be. But hey, look, gentrification is what happens when people have money and people want to live around money. So, what are we going to do about that? Probably not much.
Yeah, being in Harlem has been an experience, and I've been here off and on over the last 20 years, so it's been interesting to see where it was in the 80s to where it is now.
Right.
Okay.
So if you were going to describe to the people out there what your primary vocation is, at least in the creative side, would you consider yourself like an artist, an author, a combination of both? What do you, how do you see yourself?
Since December of 2014, well, actually November of 2014, I am now a professional publisher. And as a publisher, I, as you guys know, you also are, you guys are publishers as well. You're responsible for everything. You're responsible for, in my case, I'm responsible for the art. I'm responsible for a bit of the editing, and Hannibal Taboo just graciously caught a typo in one of my in my book, which I didn't even catch. I am
it's all
the
on
market.
you.
Yes. Now I have help. I will admit that. My family has been extraordinarily supportive, particularly my wife, who is, I lucked out in that I got one of those sisters who actually gets excited about wanting to cosplay Matty, which is highly unusual, So it's like that scene out of Ali when Jamie Foxx goes up to the counter and says, "Yo, man, how you do that?" So it was definitely that situation. So she's been with me, been married now for about a year and a half, but together for about 3 years, and it's been wonderful being with her. So that's a lot of help. My sons help. My twin brother obviously helps, which I guess we'll talk about a little bit. It's very much a I'm the focus of it, but it's been a family operation, and I have some good folks around me.
And you have been married for a year, man. That's great because they said it wouldn't last. And I think you proved them wrong.
A year and a half, had to go through the pre-Cana and all that type of stuff because my wife is a pretty well, I wouldn't call her necessarily devout, but she's devout enough as a Catholic. So
yeah,
and
you know what?
Love.
The best of us can hope to marry way over the end of our skis. You know what I mean?
Yes.
To get somebody who is so much better than we deserve in our own minds.
Yes.
But and I think that helps keep us on our toes to try to be straight, to try to do better and things like that. So, we'll revisit this 10 years down the line and see how things are going.
Sure.
Let me ask you. Let me tell people a little bit about you. You're like the animation director for the group. Now, are you a group or an organization called Big Head Scientists? Or describe Big Head Scientists to us.
All right, Big Head Scientists is the name of my studio. It has at points been other folks who I brought in to help me work on film projects, but 95% of it, 90 to 95% of it has always been just me. I give myself that name now. The company that I formed late last year is called Diesel Funk Studios, and that is a new entity that handles publishing of my books, but also handles the publishing of other books that I'm affiliated with, collaborations. If there's an artist that I intend to start branching out as the year goes on, definitely more heavily into next year where I want to begin to enter into arrangements with other artists who I like and admire their work.
Yeah, and for people who are picking us up as a podcast and don't see the links, take a look at Matty'S Rocket, Matty's Rocket.com. Is that your main site for the creative side of what you're doing for Diesel Funk?
The main site would be dieselfunk.com.
I see that now. Yeah, Diesel Funk, and it's And for those of you who are spelling impaired, it's DIE, not EI, DIESELFUNK.com. And then, of course, the Matty'S Rocket site is the one that I just gave.
Yeah, Matty'sRocket.com. Yep. Right.
Let's go back a little bit because people are always interested in how you got where you are. And, a lot of them are, they want to hear about the mechanics of maybe doing business. But for you, when did you start as a creative knowing that this was something that you wanted to do?
They're different. I'm 48.
No. I said, how old were you when you were like, let's start from the beginning. When you saw yourself as a creative.
Sure.
About when was that?
Okay, well, I was born and raised in Mississippi, and I started drawing comics, I guess, when I was 3 years old, and that was primarily because I'm the youngest out of 4 boys, and all of them did comics. So, you're the youngest, it's like you don't have much of a choice as to what you're going to do in your pastime because everybody else is doing the same thing.
Right.
And as a result, even to this day, everybody is an artist. None of my siblings turn out to be athletes or, transit workers. They're all, are artists. And I probably I didn't formally train till I got to college, but everything else was, a heavy diet of Marvel and DC comics. And a huge helping of a heavy metal magazine with Mobius and Inky Bilal and all those artists. They had a tremendous effect. That was the stuff we had to sneak in the drawer to see it, your brother, my brother would kill us. So we had to sneak in and read the books. But that also had an interesting relationship coming up in Clarksville, Mississippi, which is where I'm from. There was a point where they didn't sell comics. And I don't think there may not be a comic venue there even now to this day. And but I guess I'll check on that this summer. But the
How
idea.
big of a place is it? I mean, what's the population?
Clarksville. I've been there sporadically over the last 10 years. I would imagine can't be over 10,000 people. Probably less at this point.
Yeah.
Because it's a very, very small town. It's right smack in the middle of the Mississippi Delta, in between Tunica and different other places. The Mississippi Delta, not mud cotton. That's all that's there.
Okay.
So I did that, but I'm the same type of kid that, myself and my brother, we, saw Star Wars, and myself, I went ape over it, and that changed my life. So things began to segue from strictly comics into doing concept design. So I still have my original Art of Star Wars purchased back in 1979. That's looking at Ralph McQuarrie's drawings, John Barry, Joe Johnson, who most people don't realize, before he became the director of The Rocketeer and Captain America: The First Avenger. This guy is this brilliant concept designer who worked for Lucasfilm for many years. So these guys had a heavy influence on my work. And people like Pedro Bell and Overton Loa with the whole P-Funk thing. So that, Kirby, Mobius, all those things fused together, so that by the time I'm in high school, I took the cartooning thing more serious. But of course, there was a lot of shame behind being a comic book artist in the Delta because, you're a comic book artist. You are, you're not serious. You're immature, that type of thing.
Why can't you pick a job where you can make some money? How many times do people hear that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And so ultimately, I graduated from high school, went to Jackson State, and for about a year and a half, studied commercial art, but then realized that that's just not what I was supposed to do. So I ended up leaving Jackson State and going to SCA in New York City, majoring for about half a semester in the cartooning program. And because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a comic book artist. So I was actually working in the industry while I was in college. So I was an editorial cartoonist, one of the freelance editorial cartoonists for the Village Voice. So I did that for a few years. This was like 87. And by the time 88, 89 rolled around, I had my first professional comic book job working with Eclipse Comics on the Joyce Brabner, a project that was never, which would be a recurring theme until recently, with a project that was never published. Yeah.
Yeah, but in all of that time, it sounds as though not only were you moving upward, but you were also, I would guess that you had to be refining your art and still working on it, and maybe even finding your own style. It seems like everybody, we're sort of close. Well, no, we're not that close in age, but people of at least our generation. So obviously, they started out with Marvel, DC. What else was there? I hate to tell people how old, but I remember when the comic books were like 12 cents.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah. So
keep in mind, my older brother,
go ahead.
He had that stuff. But I'm sorry. Go ahead. What you were saying? Hello?
But, I'm just curious when you started. When did you start solidifying your own style and your own whatever sub-universes or even universes, creative universes?
Wow.
About how old were you when you started doing that?
Wow. That's a great question. I would have to say the present path I've been on now started back in the 80s because before that period everything was pretty much initially it was a Marvel DC type thing. It stayed that way for a little bit, and then it transitioned into everything was Star Wars, Ron Cobb, that type of thing. But I remember specifically sitting down with Julie Dash, who asked me to do some concept designs for this film she wanted to do, where it was a romance in which all of the buildings were African sculptures. And,
okay.
you know, as a concept designer, part of what your job is to do is to research. And as you research, it's not just that you're doing visual research, you're doing written research. You're studying how things are put together. And that one experience completely changed my life, because then I began to segue into merging African-based religions like Yoruba religion into science fiction. So what began to happen is I began to take science fiction imagery and fusing it with African-based religion. So that came into the whole Black Metropolis concept that I've been working on for about 30 years. And so I you know, before that, it was before we had a name for it as Afrofuturist. That's what I was.
Right. Yeah.
I just didn't know what to call it.
Well, I mean, a lot of artists had the imaginings of the art style. You know what I mean? Yeah. And the cool thing is, I mean, look how early you kind of glommed onto what, like you said, what has turned into it and is commonly accepted as Afrofuturism at this point. You know,
right.
That's almost 30 years ago, dude.
Yeah,
almost.
It was. I'm old now, so.
Well, no, I mean, but you know.
No. You're right. You're right.
Yeah, but I mean, that's 30 years of creativity. I mean, most of the people who we talk to about creating their comics, you know, they're of almost two separate generations. There's people who are, you know, of our generation, and then there's a younger, you know, like the between 20 and 30 set, you know, who may they're lucky because they get to see more than Marvel and DC, which we did not at that. Well, I mean, okay, I don't know who Archie was with or, you know, that sort of thing, but that's not what drove our creativity. Okay, so when you're looking at that, you know, you're actually working in school, doing the thing that it sounds like you wanted to do. How was that? I mean, was that fulfilling for you? I would imagine it should be, even though you're working for somebody else, you're still working in the field.
Well, you know, it was an interesting time because you know, in the late 80s to the 90s and stuff, a huge chunk of the 90s, you know, the comic book industry went through, by the time the mid-90s, 96, 97 rolled around, most people don't remember that Marvel declared bankruptcy. And you know, myself, along with a bunch of other guys, all of us were washed out. So because, you know, I had reached that pinnacle of working for Marvel, and I was doing painted graphic novels. So I came in the industry, you know, at an interesting time, but, you know, the industry could not sustain itself in its present form at that time.
Right.
So I guess I should say that I was on the last butt end of the analog era of cartooning.
I was just going to ask you about that.
Yeah. That's really what it was. I was the last generation of cartoonists to come in the mainstream comic book industry.
Right.
Just before the crash, which was devastating. There were people who were in the industry who haven't been in the industry since then. And again, for myself, you know, I've only been back in the comic book industry for the last, year? You know, this is after a 15-year hiatus. And because once the industry crashed, I had to make a decision whether I was going to go into live-action film or animation, and I chose animation. And I spent a very brief stint in video game design, which was not a very pleasurable experience, but I learned so much technically. And been teaching a whole lot. Used to feel really weird about teaching, but realized that it is such a fulfilling part of what I do, and it's how I learn much of what it is I do. But
right.
but so I did animation and teaching and raised my family. That's basically what I've been doing. And
Well, when you were, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, that's what I did. That's what I did for a very long time. But you were saying?
Well, when you were teaching, were you teaching younger people, or people who wanted to get into the industry who were older?
It fluctuated. My experience is I have taught the gamut of ages.
Okay.
I've taught folks, adults, continuing ed. I've worked for NYU. I've worked for SVA. I work for so many different facilities. In fact, now for the last three going on 4 years now, I've been working for New York Film Academy.
Okay.
And I am their storyboard instructor there. So I teach all of the live action filmmakers how to do how to tell stories visually, to prep them for doing their films. And
Could you come to Chicago here and teach some of these people I have to work with about the importance of storyboards? Because some people don't have the sense of a houseplant, man. They want to make movies, and how do you convey your design, your production design and things like that without being able to show it visually? I've always had a problem with people who couldn't do that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Right. No, you're right. It's just that many live-action filmmakers have very limited drawing skills. So
That's
actually, when I teach my storyboarding classes, I am not so keen on them being able to draw well, because that's a different skill set. To be
right.
to draw like Rembrandt, that requires decades
sure.
of training to get that good. So because filmmakers are working in a light capturing medium, all they need to do is just the bare essence. Stick figures will be perfectly fine. And
sure.
so when I'm teaching my students, and I guess I can call my students, I'm literally trying to purge them from the self-flogging that they drop into, to say that they can't draw, that type of thing, and getting them to learn about cameras, camera angles, compositions, transitions between one story element to the next. And that's essentially what I'm doing when I'm teaching storyboarding, teaching them how to tell a visual narrative, how to take a written narrative and translate it into a visual narrative. That's really what I do. I don't know if anyone's seen the storyboards that Scorsese did for Taxi Driver. They are awful, but man, are they clear. And that's, Taxi Driver is a brilliant movie, at least from my estimation it is. And he had boards, and they're great. Go on YouTube and take a look at that stuff. It's really great to see how this guy, even at that younger age, had such mastery over how to tell a story. And it's the thing. He's really, really good at it. Yep.
So what was it that turned you off about doing game design and that kind of work? Was it, you tell us.
Well, for me, I call it a bad egg, I have to say. I don't think gaming in general is bad. I own an Xbox. Well, I don't play games. My sons play games. So I have a deep respect for the technical process of how games are made, because technically it's not that different from 3D animation film. And that's part of one of the things I do at NYFA, New York Film Academy, is I teach not only story, but I also teach character, concept, design, all that stuff to the animation students. So games are lovely in that way. It's corporate structure. I hated it. And it was enough to turn me away from it. So, I still occasionally do things. Like right now, I'm kind of, sort of tweaking around with gaming stuff. I won't mention what it is, because the guy who I'm working with doesn't like to announce anything.
No, that's okay. That's fine.
But it's something I'm working on, something now that hopefully will turn into, and as far as beautiful stuff that we're doing, I think.
Well, and the other thing might be, there's been some time passed. You're not in that bad situation, but being able to use your artistic talents in an area that at first turned you off, but now you're kind of, it appears that you're in a different place. You have more control, you have more experience, you have a body of work, which I think is the most important thing, because that's how people judge you, by your body of work. If they don't judge you by your body of work, then, hey, they deserve what they get. Not specifically with you, but with somebody who may not know what the hell they're doing.
I agree.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say this one thing.
Okay.
I did animation for a long time, and I was horrible at it. So one thing I would say, I was great at design. I'm a fantastic concept designer. I'm a pretty good illustrator. But as a making characters move, it is something that I am not as good as I could be. And I love the art form. But I have to say to you that coming back to comics, oh my God, it's so much easier. It's like
I was gonna ask you about that. I mean, look at the tools that you have today, both for illustrating and even for animating. They give you, I would say that the tools are sophisticated enough that what they give you is a much better platform for you to examine your creativity rather than have to work at the physicality of the animation. You know what I mean? I can't imagine anybody but somebody who had a very, very well-focused mind doing the kind of Disney animation way back where you're going cell by cell by cell by cell. When you draw now, I presume you're working all digitally. Is that correct?
Yeah, I long ago gave up paper. I've been digital since I think my first tablet I purchased in like 1996 or something like that. It's been a long, long time since I worked primarily on paper. I mean, I occasionally do stuff, just sketching,
Quick and dirty. Quick and dirty sketches.
Not even. It's so little. I wouldn't even call it dirty now. It's just quick. It's just quick. It's like I am a 98% digital artist, and there are people, of course, who work on paper and they work on canvas and they work with chemical-based tools and they do wonderful work, and all the power to them. It's just, for me, it's when you're working in comics, you're working in a field that's based on reproduction.
Sure.
It's all about, okay, if you work large, you're working large, but ultimately this work is going to be reduced down into a smaller format and then reproduced over and over again. So I've learned not to be so precious about the original artwork, because that doesn't matter. I mean, it matters if a person is doing painting and part of how they make their living is not only to sell the comics, but they sell originals. And that's something perhaps, I go by these conventions now, and these guys are doing the sketches, and they're making money off the sketches, and that's something that maybe I'll toy with. But right now, digital for me allows me to take the plethora of skills that I got from animation and apply them to comics. And it is an absolute joy being able. It's like I'm trying to finish up Matty'S Rocket 2 very soon. For all those folks who've gotten 1 and waiting for 2, don't worry. I do recognize that the issue ended with a cliffhanger. Don't worry, it will be resolved. That's why it's based on 1930s serials, so it's supposed to end with a cliffhanger.
I was about to call you a content whore, drawing people in like that, getting them hooked, and then But you know what? That just makes good business sense. And you know what? If you do it well, it's still good storytelling, because then people can rehash where you may be going, because they won't know until they see the second one. So that's kind of cool to watch that process too.
Yes. I mean, there's so many different ways of, and being a storyboard artist and a concept designer, I'm approaching Matty. It's like, because originally Matty was a comic back in the 90s that I was trying to do. That, and perhaps one day I will very soon display what the original pages looked like, which were dramatically not that. They were not that far off than from what you see now. It's just that it was done completely with ink wash and markers and highlights and all that stuff. But now everything is digital.
Well, you know what? Let me give you a money-making idea.
Yes.
You know, if you've got all that artwork, you've got the early artwork, you've got your concept stuff. That sounds like a coffee table book, which can generate revenue.
Yes, it's called Black Metropolis, and I am actually laying it out now, and we will hopefully be able to go to press, hopefully late in the year. What I want to do is have it done early enough to premiere at the Schomburg show, the Black Comic Book Day, in January of 2016. That will be the retrospective of my entire career. There's so much work that I've done that hasn't been seen or stuff is published in editorial. You see it for 1 week and then it's gone. So that's what Black Metropolis will be. It's
kind of like an encyclopedia of your life because
Yes.
It's a cool way to learn about people like you. And unfortunately, since you started it before I mentioned the idea, I can't claim my 15%. But having said that, though, those are the kind of books that I like to collect because what they are is a representation of the entire artist as well as their evolution from early to the current.
Yeah, it's the type of thing where what I have learned the hard way over the years is how important failure is, artistic failure or creative failure is to actually growing into being artistically and creatively successful. The adage goes that all a success is just a number of small failures, one after the other, culminating until you get it right. And that's what that is. So I have learned, even though, I'm definitely prone to scream at a computer screen when the software is not acting right. I have learned there's a line in Matty where the guy who's interviewing Matty at the beginning of the story is essentially talking about some technical issues that he's having with the equipment to record her voice because he's giving an interview. And she's saying that innovation is problem solving is part of how you innovate. Running into an obstacle, that's actually how you get better. You run into an obstacle, you figure out a way around that. Then you run into another obstacle and you figure out a way around, around that. So I kind of had to learn that there are different states of my, heck, not even just the artistic life, my domestic life, that you kind of like have to say, yeah, it ain't looking so pretty right now, but we are en route to where we want to be. And just specifically focusing on the artistic point, I have had to let go so heavily of what others think of my work. Kind of like it, and it's always there. You always, you feel a little competitive, but you can't really allow it to color the way you go about your work. Because ultimately, no one cares. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. People are going to go live their lives however they're going to live them, and it is super important to me that I have my work done, particularly now at this point in my life. And this is what I'm about. That's why I went all in with Diesel Funk, is because there was, after a few experiences, there was clearly no reason not to go all in. Thanks to John Jennings and Stacey Robinson for that. Because they were pretty much the ones who, pushed me into doing it. It was I owe those guys a lot.
Yeah. Well, okay. So you mentioned other people's, critiques, their opinions, their reviews, their what have you. And of course, what do they say about opinions? They're like buttholes. Everybody's got one. But still, since you are an entrepreneur and what you're trying to do is you're trying to bring a product, you're trying to sell a product, that's coming out of your creativity and trying to find an audience for it. What's the? Can you walk us through your own process, how you look at other people's critiquing, and even a little bit about your own self-critiquing? Because, sometimes people will say something, like with my books, somebody will say something about the story that I may not have consciously thought about when I was writing the story, but then because somebody focused on it, obviously it meant something, so I want to give it a little think, give it some thought before I either dismiss them as really an annoying asshole, or if I want to say, you know what, that makes a lot of sense. There should be a foundation for something else because of this. How do you respond to the kinds of critique you get?
Well, back, say, 10 years ago, it used to color the way I went through my day and how I operated. Now it does not. It hasn't done that for many years now. Now my focus is about how do I get from point A to point Z in the fastest manner possible. So even if, and there's always, like you say, everybody has a butthole. I have one too. Even if my ego gets wrapped up into it, I have learned that you take that information, you absorb it, and you take what's useful from it. And what's not useful, you just leave it to the side. And it really doesn't even matter. Like I say, I was telling I had some guys, I forget their names, they were big guys, but they were asking my advice on how they would do comics and all that. And I just kept telling them, nobody cares. Nobody cares, meaning no one's going to do it for you. And ultimately, you're the only person who has the ability to stop yourself from doing it. So if you only have one person to deal with, ultimately, at the end of the day, the only person who's going to determine, other than, getting hit by a drunk driver or meteorite
or whatever, exactly.
Act of God, I am the only person who can stop Matty's rocket from being produced. And I found myself quite flexible lately.
And you've probably been getting along a lot better with yourself.
We've been getting along. We've had a very, very productive relationship lately. But so so all of that to suggest that the only voice of criticism that matters to me right now is my own. And also, and I drill it into my students' heads, perfection is perfection is like eating cold phlegm, man. It's not worth it. You do the best you can. You have a minimal standard. Like I've released stuff, 1994, Death Comes in Force, great idea, horrible execution. Meaning there must be a minimal standard of what you do. And if you hit that minimal standard, you'll always be good. But you got to hit that minimal standard. And I'm very happy with Matty'S. I'm very, very happy with it. I'm very proud of the work I did with it. I'm proud that I did not completely turn my back to the roots of animation that are in Matty'S Rock. That's why it still maintains that 1920 by 1080 aspect ratio in the panel. I'm so proud of myself for sticking to my guns with that. Even if it's different than people are used to reading in a comic, it's like, well, that's not really what I'm doing. What I'm doing is I'm telling a story that's close to me. And as long as you approach that stuff with heart, and you approach it with almost like a puzzle. It's like Matty'S Rock, the animation, which was almost killed me, even though I must have done like 20, 30 minutes of it. it's like I wanted to retain that solid movie effect, and I had a way to devise solid movie technique as word balloons, and that just came to me one day in a dream. And I'm loving the combination of subconscious and conscious problem solving in the process of being creative. And it's been that way. So that's what I'm saying. It's like, the end goal is great. I love the end goal. It was a huge deal getting these books, but the process of getting up to the book is important too. And those series of failures, recognizing, boot camp on the Mac, which is the the partition in the Mac OS where you can load Windows and run 3ds Max.
Sure.
You can run Windows applications, but 3ds Max will crash. So you have to get a PC. Those are the type of frustrating things you run into, but they ultimately culminate up into a success. And the success will be Matty's Rocket Book 2.
It's like nobody ever jumped in a car for the very first time and drove perfectly. You know what I mean? I think entrepreneurship, and I think especially creativity, is a learning process that, if you're good, probably never quits. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then the other thing that you mentioned that I think is very important for people who are listening should remember is that you should never, ever, ever let the perfect take away from the good or even destroy the good. Because I ran into this with my first book. I had like 4 days to edit it to get it to the publisher so it would be out at a certain time. And I look at it now, and there's a lot of things that I would like to re-edit. And there may be a second edition, there may not. But at some point you have to say, okay, this has to go out the way it is. And like you said, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be a very, very good representation of your storytelling ability.
Has to have heart.
And I think that's the good that you don't want to discard in the service of the perfect. Is that correct?
Yes. Everything that minimal standard must have heart. It must be true, and it must move the story forward, particularly with what I'm doing. And whether or not I wish I had 5 more pages to really go deeper into the storyline. Maybe I could cut this or that. Those things are immaterial to the full body of the work. And
because you're looking at the major arc and not every single detail along that arc. Some detail is necessary to move the arc, but you don't have to get down to the microscopic level in order to sell the macroscopic story. Okay.
Absolutely. And a lot of that process can be done in research. It's like as I do a ton of concept design, it's like, geez, I think I have the entirety of Matty'S Rocket mapped out visually, actually, in storyboard form, which I'm just taking those images and breaking them into the comic panels. I think all the way up to episode 8, issue 8 maybe, and the script that I have is 16 issues in. So I got plenty of material to carry for the next few years, and I feel very, very positive about that. But it is an interesting experience in being able to self-edit, but also to allow oneself to be free. Yep.
So the editing process is not a detriment to the creative process at all, is it? It's just applying internal discipline to make sure that you're telling the story that you want to tell.
Yeah, the editing process, which at times can be messy. Sometimes it can be messy. Sometimes it can be downright aggravating. But ultimately, what it is that the process of visual editing, written editing is just it's where you're adding what I call in the concept design world implied detail. And implied detail is where you have an image and those images are detailed, but the audience cannot consciously know what that detail is. So let's say you have the surface of a spaceship. You have piping or tubing on the side of a ship, right? In visual effects, they call them greeblies, right? And they were basically bash kits of old plastic models and glue them onto the surface. Now, of course, for the people who are making those models, it's just surface detail to provide visual interest. But for the audience member, they're looking at it and saying, oh, this is how that ship works. This ship has some kind of mechanical apparatus within it that I don't quite understand that allows it to appear to function. And you do that not only in the written word, but you can also do it in the visual world as well. So things like implied detail, knowing, okay, why is a black woman in this world that looks like Buck Rogers, and how is it that this Buck Rogers / Flash Gordon world, how did it come to exist? So all those things that I haven't even shown yet, you know, certain things I will go into, certain things I won't go into. I have a reason for all of them, and it's implied detail. It's the process of adding plausibility to your creations, and that's what it is that I'm doing.
And you know, one of the things that I see a mistake, and I will say it's a mistake. Now, I'm not the greatest writer in the world, but I'm pretty good. But one of the biggest mistakes that I see is people who, when they get into writing, they feel like they have to have, you know, an expository explanation for every single feature. Like, you know, what was the 10,000-year history of the Gorgons and why they hated, you know, Princess Leia or whatever. And there's so much exposition in there, it becomes tedious and it weighs down the story. It gets in the way of storytelling. And to what you're saying, you don't have to achieve that level of detail. Yes, you may have to explain some things in a subplot, or you may have to have some passing exposition, but I believe that the telling of the story always seems to be in the forefront of your mind.
Right. You have to be selective with these things.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfectly good example of the detail on a spaceship. You know, we find out, okay, in the Star Trek movie, they actually used a piece of a Klingon model, a styrene model, as a piece of medical equipment. Well, nobody on this side of the screen needs to know that.
Right.
But the fact that Bones was holding it in his hand was exposition enough. We knew it was a medical device, and we didn't need to know how the damn thing worked.
Right.
So I understand what you mean about that level of detail to give. It's like seasoning or the decoration on top of the cake. You know, that's all sugary crap, and it's the cake that's really important. But it does help the cohesive whole and allows people to suspend disbelief because it is part of the storytelling.
Right. And you're making, at least in my case, I can't speak for anyone else, what I'm doing is I'm making aesthetic choices, particularly when it comes to Matty'S Rocket, that ultimately I want to move the story narratively forward for the audience, but ultimately it's got to be cool to me. I got to like it. You know what I mean? That's because I'm really making this book in the final analysis. I'm making it for a bunch of people, but in that real, true spirit, it is for me. It's a book that I want to say. I'm making a book that I would buy. That's the objective for me.
Well, and there's nothing wrong with self-satisfaction as a creative. You know, nothing at all. You know, it's not like you have to be sitting there in the service of your audience and to be trapped in it, you know, to be chained down by it. You know, there's nothing to say that you can't enjoy your own storytelling.
Yeah, yeah, but I will say though, being back in the comic book industry, it is an absolute privilege. I mean, I had 500 copies of Matty's Rocket in January, and now I'm down to, I had to give a few of them away for promotion and things like that. Professional courtesy, that type of thing. But I'm down to what, 70 maybe. And, we got to go back to press for another run. And, that's a tremendous feeling. That is a tremendous feeling, having someone, young, old, come up to you and just buy your book. And they're not doing what you want them to do. They're bringing their own opinion to it. And they paid you money for it, for one thing, but they're getting something out of it. I always go back to I had numerous great experiences over the last few months selling Matty, but the most interesting was an older white woman who came up to me at the Black Comics Arts Festival in San Francisco. I guess she had to be 75, 80 years old, and this woman came up to me and thanked me, and I was like, "Oh, well, you're welcome, of course." And I was thinking, what am I? What did I do? She said, "Your character has clothes on. She is a female character, and she has clothes on." And that was something that, of course, I wanted to have clothes on, but I'm recognizing that was such a huge deal for her, and it's been repeatedly a huge deal for women, for the female audience, that people can go there and kind of like see a truer representation of themselves, which is what who Matty's supposed to be. She is an amalgam of different women that I know, that was the objective, to be able to artistically impart that in the audience and hope they get it, and that's why it seems like they are.
Yeah, I have a personal proclivity about the way women are depicted, especially black women are depicted in a lot of these comic books. I mean, the ridiculousness of a costume, where a warrior has most of her skin showing, aside. I mean, if you're going to go out there and wade out there with a sword or whatever you're going to do, somehow I don't see you putting on a string bikini to go out and do battle. And
it's not very tactical.
It doesn't seem to be, no. And the other thing is, how the hell do they stand up with breasts that weigh as much, well, whatever they weigh? I mean, so it's funny because the drawings are of a stereotypical bent, which I don't think adds to the story. And from what you're telling us, there's a certain amount of feedback that you've already gotten that depicting women in a realistic light, as realistic, obviously, as a comic book environment is something that is appreciated by a certain segment of the audience. And people will say, oh, but mostly it's teenage boys who buy this, and big breasts are what they like. And okay, I can't argue that. I don't know the marketing strategy. I certainly don't know the numbers, but I am pleased to hear you tell the story that you just told, because it seems to validate something that I've been thinking for a while. I don't do comics myself. I have a hard time drawing more than 3 fingers on one hand, so that's obviously not my forte. Hang on a second here. You're listening to the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show, a service of the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com website. And tonight we have a really cool guest, and I want you to check out his website. It's Tim Fielder, and he is the creator of Matty's Rocket. And Matty is a female character. And if you want to check out the website, Matty's Rocket, MATTYS Rocket.com. And then, of course, his other big adventure is for Diesel Funk Studios, DIESELFUNK Studios. And the website is www.dieselfunk.com, so check him out there. Let me ask you something about the business side, because this is the side that a lot of creatives have the hardest time with, because the creative thing can be a singular or maybe a collaboration, that kind of effort. But then in in the service of doing business for you, tell us a little bit about how you started the whole entrepreneurial road that you took for Matty'S Rocket. Okay, so you have the concept,
right.
You get the art done, you finally get a sellable product, and tell us a little bit about your process for gearing up to sell and the marketing. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so I will. Do you want the relatively brief version, or you want?
Well, no. I mean, we got an hour and 6 minutes. So
all right.
Take your time. I'm going to take a nap. I'm going to run get something to eat. So no, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
But see, that's the interesting part, because I call it the 80-20 rule. Okay, 20% of what guys like you and I do is the creative part.
Right.
And the 80% is making it happen. That's the business part. And I think that's the part that most people have trouble with. How do you get visibility? How do you develop a work ethic that allows you to be a businessman? Those kinds of things that obviously you've already experienced some success at. So I'm curious about what your process was to ramp up and get ready to do what you do.
Okay. So, again, the string of failures leading up to successes. You have one obstacle, you run into it, that's a failure. But then you overcome that obstacle, that's a success. Then you move to the next obstacle, and you keep going. So first of all, as long as you approach it like that, and you approach it with as best you can, because you can have up days and down days, that's a kind of a Zen process of working. So, okay, it's just about gradual, as my wife tells me, it's a bunch of small victories that culminate, achievable goals. So that's what you did. So I had done Matty'S Rocket as animation, got a bit of it done, but became dismayed every time I would go by a convention because, sure, I would be there and I'd be showing clips of the film and selling T-shirts and everything, but no one would know what it is because it's animation. That's something you can't quantify unless you put it up on YouTube, but then that's like giving it away, which is fine if you can produce it fast enough, but you can't produce it fast enough. It's not the type of stuff I want to do. It's hard. So last summer, I had I'd gone to a Black Kirby show. So Black Kirby is Stacey Robinson and John Jennings, and I've struck up a relationship with them for a while now, and I had kind of like been working on Matty as an animation, and as I began to move into, okay, let me just take a little pastime in comics, just give myself a little break from the day-to-day drudgery of producing Matty as an animation. And the two crews that I dealt with, one was Black Kirby, and the other is Alex Simmons with his African-American soldier of fortune character, Blackjack. And I asked Alex, I said, hey, man, can I'm just thinking, I love your character, can I do it? And he said, sure. And so cut to a year and a half later, we're almost done with the graphic novel, which will be out soon. And I did the artwork illustrating his stories. But with Black Kirby, they put the show on at the Schomburg, not the Black Comic Book Day, but they were actually doing a presentation of the Black Kirby mode, I guess, if you will. And I saw all this artwork, and, I love their stuff because their stuff is so whimsical and it's very colorful, but it's all, at the same time, it's intentionally deriving a huge chunk of what they do from Jack Kirby's work. That's the whole idea of it. And that extends farther beyond that, but the surface material is where they're taking images that were very often appropriated from African images and reappropriating them for further African images, that type of thing. And I saw what they were doing, and it was all based on comics. And I got so depressed after that show because I could feel it. I could feel it. I was like, oh, my God, I'm about to fail again at this animation. And I remember calling my friend Mark. I said, Mark, I think I'm about to fail again. He said, what's up? I said, I think I want to do Matty as a comic. And I literally, the cover that you see now on Matty's, it's pretty much the same drawing without the refinements in it that I did. It's the first image I produced back in, I guess that had to be this time last year, I think. Maybe April, May of 2014. And decided to do it as a comic. And it was the hardest thing, and it was like, oh, my God, it was like the life had been returned to me. I never forget one of my friends, Danny Williams, told me I was working on a movie I was trying to do, and he told me, he said, Tim, I'm going to tell you something. He said, if you don't get this movie done, you're going to die creatively. And that hit me like, oh, my God. And, oh, my God, did I die creatively. You know, that was just, we talking about something way back in like 99, 2000 when I was trying to do this. And Matty's Rocket has brought me back creatively from the dead. There's no question of that. So,
well, it sounds like what it did was the change in the art form. Okay, the change in the media, just re-sparked you creatively, right?
The delivery vehicle is dramatically easier to create.
Right.
The delivery vehicle of comics is dramatically easier to create than animation, and I can still have the same quality level. I don't have to give up what I love about animation while doing comics. You know, that was the first temptation that you know, dealt with some people who were like, well, hey, look, you know, this thing here is not working. You know, you need to turn it into a comic. Right. Which that temptation was there. You know, I guess an argument to be made, I should have done it that way. But, you know, interesting thing when you go and do it on your own. You can do whatever you want. I love that.
That's true.
I love
that is true.
Very, very liberating when you said, well, I'm the one paying for it. I'll do whatever I want.
Well, and you don't have to satisfy somebody else. You know what I mean?
Well, you're not going to satisfy everybody. You're only going to ultimately satisfy those people who find something worth viewing in your work. Right. But ultimately, I do, and you mentioned it earlier, that there is a huge, huge component that ultimately I'm making a book that I want to see. I don't want to make a book that I don't want to see. And I'm interested in it. I've done that before decades ago. I never want to do it again. I'm only interested in a book that I can feel proud of, that makes me slower, or that makes me, I don't know,
more deliberate or whatever.
Prima donna, I don't know. It's just that I want to do the best work I can because we only here for a limited period of time. I also, have my children. I want my children to be proud of what I'm doing, to be able, maybe another 30 years, 40 years when I croak, they're like, hey, man, Dad, did some great work there, So that's
but the other thing is nobody wants to toil in misery,
I have found that I can toil in misery. I can toil in misery. I don't mind toiling. I don't mind hard work. I don't mind.
Yeah, but do you?
But
No. There's a difference. There's a difference between hard work in the service of where you want to go, and doing stuff that you hate doing just for a paycheck.
Well, I can honestly say, knock on wood, let me find some wood to knock on here. I don't do that anymore. There's a difference between toiling in whether it be artistic jobs or teaching jobs.
Okay.
I now have achieved, don't want to jinx it, a balance between doing work to make ends meet and my creative work. And what started to happen is that they bleed over. And I've learned to, sometimes it's pretty painful, I've learned to let go of certain things. Like, man, I have this teaching job. This teaching job is great. I want to keep it because it gives me more money, which will in turn give me more time, and then you recognize you have to let that one go and move towards this other thing. And that's what this has been, a huge, huge exercise in learning when to hold,
for you,
when to hold, and when to let go. And so I am now at a point in my life where I have a balance. I have to constantly maintain that balance. Sometimes it's harder, sometimes it's easier, but I have a balance between doing my, creative work and doing my making ends meet work, and they both now blend together. So I love what I do. I have to be honest and say that. I love what I do. So when you're asking how do you get that process, that's the first step for me, was that I've always, talked with my friend Mark, was how, the objective was, okay, I want to create a lifestyle which is conducive towards me creating my work. And that's what I did. Now, once I did that, I'm sorry, go ahead. You were saying.
Well, I think all creatives, I think we all work towards that.
Sure.
If I could just be a novelist and not have to get the porn off of one more laptop in my lifetime, dude, I'd be the happiest man in the world. I literally would. But, I'm working toward that, and
Right.
I so admire the fact that you've reached that level.
And it doesn't mean that I'm wealthy. It just means that I have a balance. It's so important to this type of stuff, and that's what that is. So all of that to say, I guess moving further towards answer your question, that once I had achieved that and recognized that achieving it is not reaching an end goal, because maintaining balance is an ongoing activity.
Mm-hmm.
Ongoing. So it's happening now.
Right.
I might take on one too many classes, may have one too few classes. You know what I mean? That's
okay.
always,
yeah, no, I get you, yeah.
Yeah. So once that was done and I made the decision to go into publishing, it was all very practical at that point. It was saying, okay, writing down a list. What do I need to do? Okay, the first thing I need to do is I have to have a product. I have to give myself a schedule. It's okay, this needs to be done by this time. This needs to be done by that time. This needs to be done by that time. And those things were primarily, okay, I'm going to take what I've done for the animation. I'm going to repurpose it in a format within a comic book that I can live with and feel happy with. And I went back and forth. I had different design styles or how I would do it. Well, maybe I should do it this way. Maybe I should do it that way. But ultimately, I arrived at something that I could not only live with, but I could feel proud of.
Mm-hmm.
The other aspects of were setting up the legal entities. LegalZoom's great. You do that. You do that. You make sure that is in place. You make sure that you properly research and also understand that research is ongoing, what your market is, recognizing that, okay, whenever you are trying to promote something, you generally want to promote it around an event. Right. And knowing that, okay, the big event was the Schomburg. The Schomburg, at least in my estimation, in my experience, and I have very little experience because I'm really just getting back into this thing. But in my limited experience, the Schomburg's Black Comic Book Day by Jerry Kraft and John Jennings, Deidre, all those folks over there at the Schomburg, that is the premier Black comic book convention that I have seen. I mean, everybody who goes there, it's like, everybody, they shake their head. When a person has reached a point of euphoria, when you ask them, how was the Schomburg, man? And they close their eyes and a slight smile, and they kind of look up, and it's like, it's like, the spirit is starting to hit them and stuff because they're doing nothing but selling their comics in an environment that is prime just for people who want to buy black comics. And oh my God, I sold great that weekend because I did, like I said, Black Comic Book Day and BCAF in San Francisco. So anyway, I knew, okay, I wanted to premiere Matty on that date. And, without going into detail, I was in certain arrangements that I got out of because, again, no one's going to take what I'm doing as seriously as I'm going to take it. And no one's obligated to take what I'm doing. Nobody cares. So I knew if I was going to do this, I was going to have to do it. Nobody else was going to do it. No one else was going to put the hours in. No one else was going to satisfy me. And I'm really about satisfying myself at this point.
And you've got complete ownership of it too. You know, so that not only do you have the personal buy-in, but you know what? It's on you. This is not something that you could farm out to somebody else. This is on you, and because you have ownership of it, then there's that whole obligation to do it exactly the way you want it, so it gets done the way you like it. Yeah. There's that battle. I was on a panel discussion at the Black Comic Book Day with a few folks. Alex was on there as well, and we were just talking about equality. Apparently there's a huge deal of in black comics, the quality may not be as high as other comics. And I get what they're saying. Having been out of the comic book industry for so long, I recognize there was a lot of stuff that I missed. From 2000 to 2014. That I'm glad I missed those things. In terms of black comics and black cartoonists and things like that, because it seems like it's a painful evolution of getting to where they need to go. And quality is so arbitrary, man. I was saying one of the most popular web comics in the world features a dinosaur drawn in what looks like or appears to be Microsoft Paint. And visually it is awful. But it is one of the most successful web comics in creation, meaning that the guy who does it, or guys, whoever it is who does it, they make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. So clearly somebody finds that work, the quality of that work, completely acceptable. Sure. So that's why we live in a time now where quality will always be important, but, hey, it's like Paris Cullins was the one who got me straight on that. We were at tabling at New York Comic Con in 2013, and he was like, we live in a time where anything can sell. Anything can sell. Anything. He said because of the internet, because of technology, because of the reach, there is always somebody on the planet who can get into your stuff. There will always be people who won't get into it for whatever reason. There is an audience out there. And that audience, for the first time in human history, can be reached through social media. Right. So, but remember, you still have to tell a story. Oh, of course. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. The base product must be good. So, and I have to say, that was the relatively easy part. As you say, I think, what did you say?
80% of it is all the non-creative stuff. The 20% of it is making sure that you have a good product. It looks good. It reads good. People get a level of enjoyment out of it. It has heart, and you like it. Once those 5 categories were struck off, that's pretty easy because I have control over that. I have control over that. I can just put my heart into it. Boom. It's like I'm banging out Matty's Rocket 2 now. It has to be done in the next week or so. Get it out the door. And once it's out the door, then the other part comes in. Okay, we got to market it. We got to make sure that we do this. We got to make sure we do that. And, again, I'm okay with that. I actually don't mind doing social media. My wife and I are notorious about posting what we're doing. I take every time I make a sale, I try to take a selfie of myself, of the person who's doing the sale, and I make my face with whatever it is, and because that's part of how you market your work. That's part of how you get your work out there. And is it shameless? Yes, it's completely and totally shameless. And
I wouldn't even. I think you're doing yourself a disservice to call it that. Because you know what you are? You're doing entrepreneurial marketing, and entrepreneurial marketing is person to person, and it's personal. Okay, I know how to sell 20,000 copies of my books, but guess what? It's going to cost me $13,000 to do that. Is that cost effective? Absolutely. But where am I going to? I'm sitting around. You still have to come up with the $13,000.
Right.
And then that turns me from being the entrepreneurial person to person to more like the publisher who is just trying to get word out about a new author, And I think that what you do is the way you're doing it obviously is more enduring because the personal touch, you can't say enough about being able to meet the people, talk to them. Obviously, if they're purchasing your work, they have a buy-in. Mm-hmm. But then imagine how they feel when they meet you. There is an intimacy to the value proposition that can't be it can't be overestimated. So, like you said, I don't think it's shameless. I don't think it's shameless at all. I think it is at the pinnacle of that 80%. Of being about the business of doing business. How else do you do it? Yes.
I'm not going to debate with you there. You're right. I guess the reason why I call this shameless because I don't have any shame. I don't care.
Dude, ain't nothing wrong with that. I mean, having a healthy ego as a creative is a good thing.
I have to do it. I have to do it because if I don't do it, no one else is going to do it. No one else is going to sit up there and interface with a person who has read your stuff and has found something in it that even you didn't intend. They have connected with the character, and they need you to talk with them for 5 minutes. Now, they've already bought your comic, but they need to have that feedback. And being an artist is about was it Pascal Campion? I believe his name is. He's the artist. He does these drawings every day. Part of the responsibility of being an artist is releasing out to the public. And I had a very difficult time for long years releasing things into the public. You have a responsibility to release it to the public. So I knew going in with Matty as a comic that was going to come into play. I just knew, if you're going to do it, you want to make sure you do it right. Or you do it as big as you can. And I knew, I got to come out with this book. And not only do I need the comics, I need the posters, which I have multiple posters. I need the shirts. So I've invested into infrastructure. All that kind of stuff I knew I had to do because that's part of making the company, making Diesel Funk successful.
Yeah.
And I paid to become an Apple developer so that I can pay for the software to make the apps, to release Matty'S Rocket ultimately, hopefully in the next few months, as an app that's not just a page-based app, but also, you can see the images at their full-size screen image with sound, and you
interactive.
can see it like,
yes,
that's because what you're doing is like an audiobook. You're repurposing that material into different formats, and that's why I became a Google developer. So all those things play a part. You go through the process. You get your DUNS number. You make sure what you call DUNS and Bradstreet, that your DUNS number is an Apple compliant DUNS number. You don't want them to just give you a regular DUNS number because Apple won't take it. You make sure your LLC and all that stuff is in place. You make sure that you have operating costs to the extent that you can to make sure your books are going to be published. You sufficiently research DRM and DRM-free based formats for releasing your comics. You make sure your URLs and your domain names are straight. I purchased the domain names through GoDaddy, and decided, well, hey, I'll try with WordPress, but WordPress kicks my butt. I'm not a programmer. So I went back to the old tried and true Tumblr. And now,
by the way, did you pick up the URL? Oh no, I'm going to tell you this off the air. There's something very, very important that you should do. And as a an IT business professional, I definitely want to give you this advice for free because this means a lot. This makes a big difference. But yeah, I mean, everything that you're saying is what people should pay attention to, especially people starting out, because most of them have no idea what that 80% is. They don't know that it is truly, 3/4 of your time is spent in the service of doing business, and sometimes it can be daunting. And I think that your characterization of, even if you have a million failures and the one success, you're still learning how not to do things. Give us we still got time. Could you give us a little, give us some of the pitfalls where you ran into, something that was a setback, something that you learned from, because I think it'll be instructive to people to see what your process was. Okay, you're going along, you've got this product, and then you tried out X, and you learned that was just not the way to do it. Can you give us a couple examples?
Sure. I will deal with the business part, and then I'll deal with the creative part.
Okay, cool.
One or two of the things I learned from business standpoint is recognizing that not every selling event you go to is going to be ideal. Not every day is going to be Black Comic Book Day at Schaumburg. That's the thing I'm clear on, because the Schaumburg exists in this kind of anomaly. I've not been to BeccaCon or any of the others, but I mean, Black Comic Book Day was crazy. Like I say, it was like an episode of The Walking Dead, but the zombies wanted comics. They didn't want to eat humans. They wanted comics. So you had to beat them down, sign quickly, get the rocket ship done, get it, move to the next one very quickly. Keep the conversation short. Yeah. Oh, so nice. It's nice to meet you. Yes. Okay, next. That's what it was, and it was hours of that.
Right.
Bone crushing, selling, and that's what you want. But some days there may be 20 people there, and you have to accept that this is it's a gradual thing. Sometimes you have big days, sometimes you have small days. However, separate from the selling, every day is an opportunity to market and push yourself. You have to make sure your phones are charged and that you can take pictures, and that you record the events that you're participating in. Banners are hugely important. Go to Staples. Get yourself the 6-foot banner. Make sure your artwork is easily viewable from a distance. If you can't do it, get someone else to do it for you. Pay them to do it. Get those banners there so you can take it out. So when you sell, you look professional.
And the average table length, for people who don't know, the average table length at these conventions is a 6-foot table.
It's a 6-foot table.
Yeah, it fits perfectly.
Yeah. So that's the thing. And I haven't even bought. I have a table spread, but I haven't gotten a table spread with a logo on it because I have stand-up banners. Because if people are in front of the desk, they're not going to really be able to see that anyway. They're going to see the stand-up banners. That's the way I work it. And it has worked out great. However, I've also learned, make sure that as you acquire your equipment, that you have, and this seems like the most obvious thing in the world, make sure that you have sufficient luggage to carry your stuff in to protect it. I draw digital, so in studio I use a 21UX Cintiq, and that's my big guy, and I produce my work on that. But when I'm on the road or I'm teaching, I use a small Cintiq hybrid, which is it's the same form factor as the 13-inch HD for Cintiq, but it allows me to be able to work on the road. So what I do is I hook that to my laptop, and I take my old 13 HD, which I have since migrated to my son, but when I'm on the road, I take it with me, and I use that as my table display, so a person can see me drawing right there while they come to the table. So presentation is hugely important. Make sure you have extension cords. Make sure you have battery power.
Right.
So, going to a convention and assuming, that was one of the first mistakes I ever made going to ECBAC last year, was assuming, well, they knew I'm an animator, so obviously they're going to provide
power
access to electricity. It's like, no, they're not. No, they're not. They're not even thinking that way. You have to do it. So those little annoying things in terms of conducting yourself in during conventions, during selling events are important. So from a business point, though, that's what I would say. I have learned quite a bit of that. Also, I would say making sure this is something that can be tedious, even though I'm conditioning myself to do it, being able to consistently blog, updating your content. You have to do it. I do it at least once a week, but ideally twice a week is best. Recognizing how important it is that you cross promote. So if you're using Tumblr, they have the ability for you to post to Facebook and Twitter at the same time. So cool. You have to do that. But I'm really looking for software that would allow me to post from Tumblr, post to Facebook, but also allow me to post to all of the groups I'm a member of on Facebook all at the same time. That's what I'm waiting for. I'm hoping someone knows how to do it, because right now what happens is when I post, I literally go through each group one by one and I share to that group. I don't post to individuals' timelines or things like that. I only post to groups, the groups I'm a member of.
I don't think Facebook is going to let that happen unless they charge you for it. You know what I'm saying?
Right, and that's something maybe, and I'm prepared to. I'm looking into that. I'm looking into boosting and saying, okay, if it's $10 and they'll allow me to do it, and I pay $5 a week, then it might be worth doing that. Pay the $20, and every time you send that post out, because it's going to reach the maximum amount of people. So the business part is recognizing that all these things, both the successes and the failures, are cumulative. And that as you learn something, okay, I should bring power. I should make sure that I double check everything. I should bring something to eat. I should energy bars. Those are simple things. that you learn over time. So that's the business aspect of things. On the creative, I'm still work in progress in that area. I'm learning not to overtax myself with too many obligations. Right now, my primary obligations are Matty'S Rocket and Blackjack.
Sure.
And that's we just Alex and I just did it. We were supposed to have done it with Chris Ryan, but Chris got held up a little bit. But we were doing Blackjack Live, where Alex was doing a fairly convincing a portrayal of an old Irish white guy, even though Alex is a middle-aged black man. Did pretty good.
Yeah.
Did it pretty good. And so I'm drawing live with him. He's doing it. So these are marketing, selling events that really culminated in his book being carried in Jim Hanley's universe and my book. So Matty'S Rocket can now be purchased in Jim Hanley's universe. It can be purchased in Bergen Street Comics, Joe Koch's Comic Book Warehouse, and we've got another one, big one coming up. But I'm not at liberty to speak on that just yet. But after Matty'S Rocket 2, we'll announce that one.
Sure.
So a business part, that's what it is. Creatively, pacing, making sure that, I'm going to say this is going to sound really weird, but it's like I want my book available for certain events, and I will move heaven and earth to do that. But knowing that if you're not ready, you're just not ready.
Right.
Knowing when to say this is not ready. I want it to be ready, but it's not ready.
Right.
Knowing when that it is. My brother told me long ago that life is difficult, and I never understood it. But what he means is that opportunities that you think come up at one point in your life will inevitably come up again if you live long enough. You know what I mean? And it's knowing that, it's okay to screw up because you'll get another chance to make it right. So other than that, visually putting the time in, also recognizing that it's all a work in progress and it takes time to get there, and not to punish yourself for not moving faster or moving more diligently. It's recognizing that it's you don't want feature creep, if you will, but you do want, because you want to be able to start on an aspect or a feature of some project and ultimately finish it and move on to the next. But it's also recognizing that that's part of the process. Yeah. So did that answer your question?
I think so, because when you explain your process, people who may not be at your level, may not have your experience, you do give them insight. And here's the thing that I was going to not say, but I am going to say it. For everybody out there who has a web domain, who has a domain out there, and you have your identity invested in that domain, you should really think about buying one more domain name, and that is your domain name .sucks. Because that domain is available now. So, like Al mentioned, that all he in the chat room, all he needs is alhobby.com. And what if somebody who doesn't like Al gets alhobby.sucks? You see what I'm saying?
.sucks?
SUCKS. Those just became available. Taylor Swift had already bought hers. She doesn't want somebody grabbing TaylorSwiftSucks.com or TaylorSwift.sucks. So I would advise everybody to take a look at that, to pay attention
I've never heard
to
of
what
that.
they're.
Wow.
Well, they just came available.
Wow.
And of course, the big companies got to jumping ahead, like Microsoft.sucks. All of them, the people who have these who have invested a lot in their domain identity,
right,
got in ahead. Who had a lot of money got in ahead of time. But my recommendation to anybody, and there's going to be people out there who are going to say, oh, man, I'm not worried about that, blah, 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 blah. And I'm going, pay the $14 damn and grab it and shut the hell up. Because you know what?
Right.
You don't know what you're talking about. I've been in the IT industry since 1970.
Mm-hmm.
There's not much I don't know about it. And I remember when the domains first came available and people would pick up a domain for a big company that didn't have theirs, and they would park it and they would sit on it so that they could make some money. I think the funniest example of that right now is TedCruz.com. You know, that little weasel senator guy?
Okay.
Ted Cruz? Yeah. He's running for president, and he didn't get TedCruz.com. If you go to TedCruz.com right now, there's a banner there saying support the Affordable Care Act and support President Obama.
Well, he supported it. He just got Obamacare the other day. Just signed up for it.
Yeah, well, he did, and you know what? he's got no chance of being president anyway.
Oh yeah, of course not. Yeah,
it's highly hilarious that these people, these conservatives who think they're so damn smart, are really some of the dumbest people in our country. They really are. So anyway, go pick up your .sucks domain. Like, let's say, for example, like Black Science Fiction Society .sucks. Right. I think somebody would want to get hold of that so that somebody else doesn't get hold of that. Same thing for your domain. I'm going to do the same thing for mine over the weekend. I just have to slip the ankle bracelet off, go rob some people so I can go pay for some domains.
Right.
But I go ahead. I'm sorry.
I will say, with the domain name thing, I actually was very fortunate with mine because the name of mine, it's just simply dieselfunk.com. And I guess it was like a year or so ago. Dieselfunk is a genre of work. It's like cyberpunk.
Absolutely.
Steampunk, cyberpunk. And when I saw it, I was like,
you had the foresight.
Well, I can't say that. I can't say that. I was like, well, I need a name for a company. I need a name for a company. Man, Dieselfunk, I've always loved that name. Let me just go online and see if it's available, and oh my God, it's available. So it took 30 seconds to buy. I'm getting it right now, and that's great. So I will have Dieselfunk forever. Because that's what it is. That's what it is. And it works. It works. I love it. It's easy to remember. It's a hot name. I love my logo. With the wings and stuff, and that's like an owl head. And it's those type of things in terms of these things. It's like a lot of times it's very hard to go through a niche part, try to do something. But once you get past that part, it becomes dramatically easier. Once you have a graphic that serves your company well, you can print it, release it on anything. And that works really, really well. So, yes, it has been an interesting run. Matty'S Rocket, of course, is, retro Afrofuturism. And, I guess I should tell you how the genesis of it. My dad is almost 81, and my mom, she's going to be 78 this year, 77 or 78, I forget. But these folks grew up in a time when there was no Lieutenant Uhura or Black Boomer on Battlestar Galactica or any of that. They grew up not seeing themselves pretty much at all in terms of any kind of movie thing. It wasn't TV when they were young. But when they went to a movie house, they didn't see themselves. Or if they did, they saw themselves in some kind of blackface. And so this idea behind Matty'S Rocket, beyond the fact that I want to produce the book so my dad and my mom could see it, and people of that generation, my late Myrna Bain and Pat Robinson, who were my mentors, I wanted to produce a book that if Oscar Micheaux made a science fiction movie,
Mm-hmm.
and he cast the movie, he made a science fiction movie, and he casted Lena Horne in the main role, what would it look like? And that's what I wanted to do with Matty'S Rocket. I want people to the beauty of Afrofuturism is you can go forward or back. You can do anything with it. And you know, a lot of Afrofuturism, like there's this a lot of Afrofuturism in terms of visual Afrofuturism, not written Afrofuturism. Because when you're dealing with written Afrofuturism, Chip Delaney, Stephen Barnes, Tanara Dew, yourself, you know, you guys we're pretty covered. You got black science fiction, you got steampunk. I mean, Milton Davis, all these guys write stuff. Balogun Adeteje, I hope I didn't mispronounce his name. There are plenty of writers, black, of color, who cover us when it comes to black characters in fantasy science fiction environments. So Afrofuturism, we're covered. Visual Afrofuturism, on the other hand, there are practitioners of it. And I don't know if I would necessarily, even though there's an aspect of superhero that is Afrofuturism, like definitely what Daoud does with Brother Man, there's an element of Afrofuturism. But straight science fiction or sci-fantasy, not a ton of people doing it. I know Machindo does it. James Eugene, he does it. My good friend Eric Wilkerson does it. A few other people, black painters who are concept designers. When I'm saying that, let me qualify what I mean. I mean someone who can take the same level of blending narrative design and product design that you might see in the equivalent of a movie and fusing those things together with the glue of Afrocentrism. That's what I'm talking about. That's what visual Afrofuturism is to me. Yeah, there are plenty of fine artists out there who do elements of Afrofuturism, and that's fine. That's that aspect of it. I don't. There's those who would debate, well, this is Afrofuturism and this is not Afrofuturism. The fact that black people are alive is Afrofuturism. In general. I'm talking about visual Afrofuturism within a context of entertainment design and narrative design. That's something that the equivalent of a visual Afrofuturist for say someone like Ralph McQuarrie would be a Machindo, because he is not just a great character designer. This cat is an amazing vehicle and tech design. That's not easy to do. You know what I mean? That's not easy to do. It's just as conceptual as any fine artist might do, but this guy's building this stuff in his head in a practical sense. So when James Eugene has his characters, which were clearly black and Afrocentric, but he's doing it in such a way where there are these floating interfaces around, and they have a deeper meaning. They could even be implied detail, just as I was talking. But he's adding a meaning on top of it. That's visual Afrofuturism. You can do it. For me, I try my best. I don't know if I'm as good as those guys, but I try to do it within a context of I actually use a lot of 3D in my work. So I'm a 3D modeler, been modeling since the 90s. So that's how I achieve my effect. And I guess I can talk a little bit more about how I create Matty'S Rocket, but it's achieving a certain realism in the work.
Right. And actually, one of the things that I want to talk to you about is when you write the story, and you obviously have characters who look like us because you're writing for us. But let me ask you a little bit about the telling of your stories. Is one of the strategies or one of the focuses for your storytelling to tell stories that have a broad appeal, or do you feel that you're writing stories only for people who have a racial affinity for the characters?
The answer I give now would be very different than the answer I would have given, say, 5 years ago.
Well, let's talk about that. 5 years ago, what were you thinking?
I'm going to say this. Don't take this the wrong way. It's not important.
Oh, no, not at all.
No. The reason why it's not important anymore is because my sons, 14 and 15 right now, will be 15 and 16, and going to have an empty nest here in about another 3 years.
Sure.
Yeah, to get myself psychologically ready for that. But they don't go see movies anymore. They don't watch regular TV. It's like, Dad, did you pay the internet account? Did you pay? Is Xbox Gold active? Dad, is Netflix paid? That's and that's just this aspect of it. So on the Xbox, their primary mode of accessing creative or entertainment content comes through video games.
Okay.
But their primary mode of watching motion entertainment is through YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
If they're reading comics, it's through webcomics.
Mm-hmm.
One of my sons has an iPad. He reads comics on his iPad. So the way that generation consumes media is completely divorced from the way, you and I, our generation is, it's like we're in another universe.
Absolutely.
But these guys are so young, they don't even know what it's like to maybe the fringe of what it's like. Like, you remember when Nickelodeon used to have this dominance during the 90s?
Right.
And it's not so dominant now. I mean, it's still there, but it's like that world is gone now. The world that exists now is the stream. And the stream is simply, and I was speaking with John Jennings about this the other day, the stream is essentially the data delivery systems, and that data delivery system is so powerful now that it can download still or moving images or audio images or still images in high resolution anywhere in the world at any time, at the drop of a button, a touch of a button. And that is the world we live in now, and that world is not going away. We don't know what it's going to turn into in the final analysis. In fact, an argument could be made that it will continually change, like what's his name, Gordon, the Gordon's law. Every iteration of the CPU gets exponentially faster. Moore's
law. Moore's law.
Yes, Moore's law. And so it's the equivalent of that. So all of that to say that right now, it is more important for me to create material that is good. My audience is specifically my mother, my father, Black women, Black men, Black boys, Black girls, and then every other race after that. I know that sounds like a cop-out, but it's true. It's true because we live in a world now. Think about it. Scandal's big. How to Murder, or whatever the show is big. Empire is big. Those shows are big because we exist in an environment now where CBS, NBC, ABC, none of them hold dominance anymore. Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, Roku, CBS is now going to be streaming. HBO is streaming. And once those, clearly FX channel is going to have to stream. AMC is going to have to stream. Everybody has to stream because it's the way that data is delivered.
Well, and let's be honest, the cable television industry has been so abusive to its own customers that what they've done is they've driven customers away. Yes, people get their internet through their cable, but if they can drop the cable TV service and just keep the internet, these guys are going to have to change up their business model. And I think the other thing that you said earlier was, I think you're right about there being a constant evolution of digital delivery methods and product, because that's where it's at. I was working with a marketing group about 4 years ago, and one of the things that I really, really, really pushed them to think about is the fact that very, very soon, because they were a black marketing company, something like 80% of all black folks, very, very soon, probably before 2020, 80% or higher are going to get all of their content through their mobile device, right, whatever that happens to be.
Right. There's no question of that.
Yeah, you ignore that at your peril, if you're a business person.
I can't ignore it. There's a reason why there's one of the reasons why I intentionally kept from, I could have taken the panels from the animation of Matty'S Rocket and started chopping them, redoing them to make it more like a traditional comic book. But right. I was thinking, Tim, come on, man. You obviously love animation. Why don't you keep that? Use it as, Scott McCloud shows in his book, as a mode of telling a story, right? Don't turn away from it. It's a beautiful thing. Use it for what it is. It's beautiful. Use it to tell your story. It's like, yes, some people are not going to be able to get with it because they're used to having a standard way of the way you tell a comic book. I get that. But there's going to be a segment of your audience that's going to buy in. You have to train your audience. I mean, comic books are an extension of the daily strips. What happened was people they would package them together and fold it, and that's how comic books came about. So new formats like the infinite canvas, where you go on top and you just hit the down button. It just scrolls all the way up. Daniel Liskey and his Worm World saga. I love that thing. It's all infinite canvas work. So all of this is I'm telling stories that appeal specifically to my family and people in my community, but without a doubt, has the ability to spring into a more mainstream format. That is always my intention. I love and I'm also horrified by black people. You know what I'm saying? That's just part of being black. But I love what we are, and what we struggle for. At the same time, I love Raiders of the Lost Ark. I'm sorry.
Right.
And it's that love and knowing that, I have a deep affection for pulp storytelling, for action adventure. I have a love for science fiction.
Sure.
Those things, and that's what I want my work to be. I want it to be that. I want my work to be that. I will say this one thing, though. Where we're about to embark now, however, it's like I was saying about Paris Collins, saying that, hey, anything can sell. It's like every week over the last month, there's been a new announcement of a new comic book that's been optioned into a movie or a TV show. Right. And you have to ask yourself, and I've said it to several people, but I'll just say it now during this interview so it can be recorded and people can know, this is what's going on. And I have to tell my students this stuff all the time because, you get young, 20, early 20, mid-20 something film students, and the New York Film Academy gets these kids, and they're in. It's just a factory. They basically making movies from sun up to sundown, And they work them so hard to learn how to make movies that there's not as much time to learn things like film theory, which could be both a plus and a minus, but that's what they do. But more importantly, these kids are working so hard they don't have as much time as they should to pay attention to what's going on in the industry.
Excuse me. Yeah.
No problem. So what's happening now is with the stream, everybody can't. It's like House of Cards. I love House, but it's eventually going to end.
Right.
House of Cards can't go on for another 2 or 3 years. Beyond that, after a while, it's like, okay, he's already president. So what happens next? You know what I'm saying? So we can expect another 2 or 3 years. I binge watch House of Cards. Every time it comes out, I sit there, I start on a Friday, and by Saturday night, I have finished watching all 13 episodes of House of Cards.
Sure.
I'm not going to do that again. I do it one time. And so the problem becomes for Netflix is once that audience has binged on that, then the audience moves on to something else.
That's
so
true.
Netflix is compelled, just in order to survive, to consistently produce new content. And this is not just, this is every broadcast entertainment outlet. BET, although it's owned by Time Warner, has to consider streaming. Time Warner must consider streaming. Paramount, I was looking on a line today, there was rumored that there will be a new Star Trek series. Maybe there will, maybe there won't. But of course there has to be a new weekly Star Trek series because Paramount can't sustain not having a Star Trek movie every 3 years. They can't do it. You might have a Star Trek movie every 3 years, but you got to have a Star Trek series going every week to survive in this market. It's why Disney bought Lucasfilm. It's why Disney bought Pixar. It's why Disney bought Marvel. They took up all the top-tier IPs. DC, which is owned by Warner, has their IPs. So that means that Valiant was purchased by DMG, at least purchased, they entered into a deal, $100 million. So now all of these people are getting these graphic novels, written books. Don't be surprised if your book is purchased in a bit, to make movies because there's not enough. There's too much airtime, empty space, too much competition. So they've got to start digging in areas for stories that have traditionally not been told. And that's why I believe we're now about to culturally and creatively go to a new world in terms of black.
I think you're right.
Black material.
Because I think the Afrofuturism movement is about to see a lot more notice in mainstream media than any other time. And basically the bottom line, which AOL knows, all of these big conglomerates, Time Warner, whatever, is content is king. You have to have content. That's because that's what you're selling. We're just about out of time here.
Okay.
But first of all, it's very cool to have somebody like you here who has the experience that you have and to be able to tell people that. And I want to thank you for being here because this has been a joy, man. I mean, this has been easy. This is I like it when it's easy for me. I'm a neurotic over and underachiever at the same time. I will generally do something better than most people, but I'm going to put in the least amount of effort to get it done. But anyway, what I want to do is I want to thank you for being here. And
thank you so much.
The other thing is when you're going to go to any of these cons, and it sounds like you kind of stick, to the ones in your area, but even then, if you would go ahead and post up appearances where you're going to be at these conventions in the BSFS events calendar, when somebody doesn't have something to do on the weekend and they go look in the events calendar, they can see that you're there and maybe head over to where you are and you get to meet some of the people who are in your online neighborhood at blacksciencefictionsociety.com. So if you can remember to do that, that would be great.
I will do that. I will do that.
That'd be cool. And then other than that, man, again, let us know when all of these milestones come up. When you got the second one come out, the second Matty'S rocket come out, the compendium of your artistic arc, that's going to come out maybe, what did you say, maybe the end of this year or early next year?
Well, yeah, Black Metropolis will be out in January. That's the intention.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, so definitely keep us posted on that.
We'll do
and I'm waiting here to see if Jarvis is awake, to see if he's going to drop in and say his goodbyes. Oh, yes, there he is. All right, so Jarvis, go ahead and take us home.
Oh, my bad.
Right.
I'm just kidding.
How's it going, man? I hope you had a good sleep.
No, I'm just playing. That was some excellent information, man, and I love the fact that we had a chance to get you back on. I don't know if these guys know, but you're old school. This man has been on the site probably about 5 years now. Yeah, he did one of our first logos when we first got started, and one of them is still on the left-hand side of the site. It's black and white, and it's animated. It was some awesome work. And
that's Robot Head.
Yeah, man, I love it. I still got all of those graphics, and I used all of them at different points to keep the site fresh. But I had an opportunity to physically meet Tim last year. At least I think it was Tim last year at ECBAC.
No, that was me.
And that's one of the things I love about those events, man. We get to meet each other in person and get to know each other and just catch each other in our own element and support Black science fiction as a whole. But the information that you shared with us tonight, man, is completely invaluable. You have that firsthand experience with the big companies, Marvel and some of those other things. So I really am glad that you came on and shared your views and your experience with us, because we need to hear this stuff so that we can continue to grow Black science fiction, get better, and continue to make more.
Okay.
And so with that, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me, and got a whole lot more to say and to do. So I hope to be back with you guys eventually.
Okay, cool. And thanks, Will, for making it entertaining as always.
Thanks a lot, William. Thanks a lot, man.
And everyone,
my pleasure.
Everyone that participated, whether you shared it online, whether you are listening or you're going to listen, thank you for taking your time out to tune into the show. And I just want to encourage everybody to get active on the site, share what you're doing, share your work, any events that you run across, and just share the site with other people so we can continue to grow this thing. It's getting bigger and starting to snowball. I'm excited about the Matty'S Rocket, the new project. I've been familiar with the online project for a long time. One quick question, Tim. Is it a possibility for you to ever take the existing Matty'S Rocket and put it all together as one, like, DVD or something?
Here's the thing. And it's like, man, I thought the show was over. I have so much animation that's been done, but in order to produce it, I was jumping around. So I would say there's probably about between 10 to 15 minutes that can play back to back. But then once I got into the 20-minute area, it's just snippets. So It's something that I will probably eventually go back to, but I'm in no hurry. Right now, I love doing comics. It's so much easier. You get feedback so much quicker, and it still looks exactly the same. And you don't have bad motion distracting anyone from the story. And that'll be it. and that's what I love about it. Oh, and by the way, Lightning Source is a great printing facility for people.
Oh, yeah.
Online video. I forgot to mention that part, but anyway, it's been a pleasure talking with you guys.
Yeah, that's who we use, and I hope to see you at one of these events this year.
Yep. All right.
Okay, cool. Will, I don't know if you're going to stick around for a few minutes after we start recording in about 20 seconds. But if you like, you can stick around for a few more minutes and share anything else off the air, but I'm going to have to cut it short right now. Okay. Thank you again, everybody, for participating. It's been a great show. Thank you so much.
All right. Good night.
Okay. Good night.
All right. Peace.
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 Good night.
All right. Peace.